Next up on the agenda is House File 1555, the Omnibus Transportation Finance Bill.
Another long debate on the gas tax.
And while Representative Hornstein's making his way, I will move to refer House File 1555 to the General Register.
Sorry, Boo. We all wish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Representative Hornstein, welcome to the committee.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yes.
Members, I'm very happy to present to you House File 1555. This is the Biennium's Omnibus Transportation Finance and Policy Division bill for the year. There are several provisions that are of particular interest to the Tax Committee, and I will briefly go through some of the major ones. There's, of course, many of them, but I think there's several that I think are of most interest to this committee. Before I get into those specific provisions, I do want to briefly share, Mr. Chair and committee members, the vision and philosophy behind this bill. And it's really quite simple. Minnesota's infrastructure is lagging. It is literally crumbling. Many of our roads are 50 years old. They are in desperate need of repair and maintenance. In fact, the American Society of Civil Engineers, a nonpartisan and well-respected organization that gives report cards to all the states on their infrastructure, rated Minnesota's road infrastructure as a D+, below average. This is not conducive to our citizens' safety, mobility, and economic development challenges and opportunities that we have. Creating a strong transportation infrastructure is a prerequisite to our shared prosperity. And so our bill aligns the stated needs that I believe almost every stakeholder in both parties agreed to are the needs of the state financially in our road and bridge infrastructure. It aligns those needs with the revenue needed to address the urgent repair and maintenance of that infrastructure. In addition to roads and bridges, we also align the stated needs of our transit infrastructure with additional revenue. And I am talking both in the road and bridge sector and transit sector of needs both in the metro area and in greater Minnesota. And so this bill aligns the revenue with the need. And we raise revenue in ways that are already set aside in our budget planning for transportation needs. What I'm talking about is the constitutional dedication of the gas tax for road and bridge purposes only. And I think this bears repetition. Article 14 of the Minnesota Constitution dedicates the gas tax for roads and bridges, not for light rail transit, not for hospitals, not for schools, not for the bill that you just addressed, health care. Road and bridge infrastructure only. And so we address this problem and this challenge by raising this dedicated line of revenue by the gas tax, a fee on motor fuels, if you will, 5 cents per year over the next 4 years. And with that new revenue, we are able to not only address the maintenance needs, which are very, very significant, just maintaining the infrastructure we have now, Mr. Chair. We are able to address that problem as well as fund many needed expansion projects and safety projects all across the state of Minnesota. Our transit challenges are very significant. We have 720,000 new residents expected in the metro area over the next 20 years. In order to address the mobility needs and challenges of that growing population, we have to make investments in our transit system, new investments, and ensure that our existing transit infrastructure is is improved and the frequency of service is increased. So we have a half-cent metro sales tax to address this. Oh, and by the way, members, I neglected to say, and it is also very important, on the road bridge side, we do have an increase in the license tab fees, and those fees consist of fees on new and, of course, existing vehicles. And in terms of the existing vehicles, many of those, and the commissioner has pointed this out, are older vehicles, 11 years and older. On those, the license tab fees are reduced. And so if you are paying for an expensive new car, yes, you will pay more under our legislation. And then finally, members, there is, I think, a fourth pretty important feature of this bill. We add revenue for deputy registrars via additional fees so that they can take care of their ongoing challenges with our new license and registration system. And then we also have additional fees so that the Department of Vehicle, the DVS Vehicle Services, will be able to be properly staffed so that our constituents can get license tests done in a more timely way. We have many people traveling all over the state so that their teenagers can get the driver test administered in a timely way. We have many people that are on hold for a long time with their challenges related to delays in getting their license tabs, et cetera, processed properly. So we address that in this bill as well. Of course, there's many other provisions that are important, not necessarily directly tax related. We do have $10 million for the deputy registrars to cover their costs that they incurred because of the challenges and delays and, quite frankly, technological failures that were associated with the rollout of the MNLARS system a couple of years ago. That money is contained in this legislation. So with that, members, I would be happy to answer questions, but this bill is absolutely critical for our future. With regard to the motor vehicle sales tax, one last one, sorry. We do raise that from 6.5% to 6.875%. It's a slight increase. We are now aligning the motor vehicle sales tax with the broader sales tax rate. That will increase funding for Greater Minnesota Transit. It will also provide the first dedicated stream of money for cities below 5,000. That is very, very important. Many members are interested in that. Here and there, we have funded those cities, but for the first time, we have a dedicated stream. That is critically important for Greater Minnesota and actually even some suburban communities. So I wanted to make sure folks were aware of that. And so then in conclusion, this is absolutely critical to move the state forward in terms of growing our economy, accommodating, I think, a very positive trend in our demographics. Many more people want to live here, work here, raise a family. We can't do that successfully without a strong road, bridge, transit infrastructure. We also have some money set aside for active transportation statewide and for bike and pedestrian choices in the metro area. So with that, members, I would be happy to take questions.
Very good. We do have some testifiers, and I think Commissioner Bowerly would go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Cynthia Bowerly. I'm the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Revenue. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for hearing this bill, and Chair Hornstein for bringing this bill forward. Members of the committee, this bill aligns with Governor Walz's, a little lapse in, I'm in a time machine. Sorry. Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor laid out their budget. They prioritized investing in our transportation system across the state of Minnesota to address our crumbling roads and bridges and expand transit opportunities. And we thank Chair Hornstein for also choosing to invest in communities across the state with this comprehensive and dedicated funding for these needs across the state. Importantly, in this bill, with the gas tax and the additional sources of revenue that go into the highway fund, 40% of the additional funding goes to local roads and road systems. That's a 35% increase in transportation funding for those Minnesota counties and cities across the state of Minnesota. And we know at the Department of Revenue that there is a growing need and recognition of this need because we see more and more counties taking advantage of the half-cent transportation sales tax option that is available to them in Minnesota law. So we know that is a growing need. And with this funding that will come through this dedicated revenue source through the formula system, it will relieve the pressure on local property taxes because they will not have to put that onto those local levies. So we appreciate the chair's comprehensive approach, including the proposal to increase the motor vehicle sales tax to 6.85% to allow for needed investments across the board. There are a number of other provisions that align with the governor's proposal. And while there are some small differences, what we appreciate is that this is a comprehensive approach to dedicated funding for the transportation needs across the state of Minnesota. And for the local metro area includes the proposal for the dedicated sales tax to be used for transit, buses metro mobility for individuals who need help getting around the area. And included in here is an increase as well to Greater Minnesota Transit. 8.5% of this distribution goes to Greater Minnesota Transit. So we thank the chair for this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Any questions for the commissioner? Commissioner, you mentioned something about property taxes. And I know in some of the research is that if you take away what cities and counties and townships receive in like federal and state aid, which would be own source kind of revenues, that they're paying about $1.5 billion a year in street maintenance costs of some sort, which according to the research I have is about 29, almost 30% of all city, county, township levies. And in fact, that 1.5 billion is probably almost twice as much as what's currently coming in on the gas tax. So probably your biggest, and disagree with me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like almost the largest portion of kind of revenues that are going towards local roads and that are coming from the property taxpayers right now. And I was especially really good to hear the dedicated funding for cities under 5,000, which I think would go a long ways to alleviating that. But am I on track with this? And is that what you're looking at when you talk about property taxes, Commissioner?
Thank you, Chair Marquardt. Local units of government have a limited ability to raise revenue as pursuant to the statutes of Minnesota. And so the local levy, their property tax levy, so the property taxes that they ask their residents to pay on their homes, on businesses, same thing for school districts. This is the only place that they can raise revenue outside of this additional authority that was granted them a few years ago, the sales tax provision or any other local sales tax that are adopted that are approved by the legislature. But local governments rely on property taxes, which really means homeowners, people who own property in those jurisdictions are paying that bill.
Thank you. Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as long as we're starting getting into the tax piece of that and so forth, I think we need to also include the changes in sales tax that's going on in the metro area versus greater Minnesota, and how then the lease sales tax and others that have changed in this bill impacts them too. So now we have in other areas that are beyond actually this bill. Now, the 5% sales tax that counties in the metropolitan area half a cent. Sales tax really increases the dollars available for various transportation issues. And then we look at the change in the Minnesota vehicle lease sales tax, in which the metro counties are going to get another $30 million. And then we go to the invest, which is the vehicle sales tax, and the change of the percentages in which transit's going to get almost an additional $300 million for transit for that. It seems like that's quite a change in the metro area versus greater Minnesota. And I'm not trying to make this into metro versus greater Minnesota. I'm just talking about the dollars that are growing there that really aren't about the road and bridge infrastructure that we keep talking about is the greatest need. And so that question, I'm sure we'll have further discussion about it, but isn't that a major change in direction in which we've been going for transportation needs?
Commissioner Bauer.
Chair Marquardt and Representative Petersburg. First, I want to make sure that we're talking about the same things. Number one is so there are, with the bill that I believe is had been heard in this committee, the metro counties have the authority under the law to enact that as half cent, but I'd have to do a little more research to know whether they have. So I think if your question is about, is there a greater need in the metro area that needs to be funded through some of these mechanisms, I think that is absolutely true, and I would probably defer to the chair on the details of that need. But when you say, or was this a different direction, all of the proposals that are in this bill are existing provisions in Minnesota law. So to my knowledge, there's not a new provision in here that is changing the direction of how we fund the roads and bridge need in Minnesota.
Chair Hornstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Petersburg, for the question. You know, my transportation mentor in this body was former Representative Bernie Leader. He represented a district in Crookston. And what Representative Leader taught me is that a successful transportation bill has to align the needs and the revenue for greater Minnesota and the metro area and include road, bridges, and public transit. And so we do that successfully in this bill. I don't view this, Representative Petersburg, as a change of direction. I view this as aligning with what Representative Leader did during his years here and during his very successful effort to provide new revenue for transportation in 2008. Now, when you talk about the MVEST changes and leased vehicle sales tax changes, yes, there are some changes, but they all are resulting in additional revenue, dedicated revenue, to address the growing needs. So, yeah, we are aligning new revenue sources with growing needs in the state. And there are transit needs, and there are road needs, and we still have, you know, if you compare dollar for dollar, significantly more dollars going for road and bridge infrastructure than for transit. There's an increase in both, but I think there's this mythology that, that this is, only addressing transit needs in the metro area. Nothing could be further from the truth. I'm glad that we are. I'm proud that we are. We have that half-cent metro sales tax increase, which will, some of it will be used for roads, by the way, but that will really significantly improve our transit system in the metro. But we're also funding greater Minnesota transit. So again, as Representative Leader taught me, cover the whole state, but cover all modes as well.
Representative Petersburg.
Mr. Chair, and we're going to have a lot of other testifiers, and I just wanted to question Commissioner Bowerly on that particular one. We'll have later discussions about this in general. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Representative Westergaard.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's not going to come to any surprise that I'm from greater Minnesota, so anything that we can take, we greatly appreciate it. And how I see this, and correct me if I'm wrong, more money goes to greater Minnesota than the metro in the gas tax percentage for what we pay in for what we receive in greater Minnesota? Is that a fair?
No.
No?
Mr. Chair and Representative List-Lagarde, that's correct.
That is correct. Do you have them numbers by chance? Tommy Rukavina would be proud of me.
Mr.
Commissioner,
Chair,
welcome.
Margaret Anderson, Kelleher, Commissioner of Transportation. I think what's fair to say about the funding of transportation, Representative List-Lagarde, is that overall, Greater Minnesota receives 60% of our current transportation funds to 40% of our road and bridge funds in the state of Minnesota. Our prediction, the MnDOT prediction, over the next 4 to 6 years is that will climb 70% to 30%. Minnesotans in Greater Minnesota pay a slightly higher percentage of the gas tax. I believe it's about 52%. In the metro area, on the motor vehicle sales tax, the issue is actually the reverse. But the percentage of dollars going out to Greater Minnesota is higher than in Metro Minnesota. And Mr. Chair, if I could just take a moment to say, I believe that's why you have seen all of the metro area counties implement a half-cent sales tax, where they have some flexibility in being able to use those dollars for either transit or their local roads and bridges. But, Mr. Chair, I know that equity and fairness is important to you and to members of this committee. The issue is that not every county in this state has the ability or can implement that half-cent sales tax. And therefore, that gets to a very important part of the WAL's budget, which is One Minnesota and equity for all in this transportation package.
Thank you. Representative List-Lagarde.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just real briefly, the under 5,000. I have one community in my whole district that is over 5,000. So this ability for them to have access for the remainder is extremely important. And when I come down here and I live in the metro, my mom and dad taught me to have love, joy, peace, patience, and kindness. And I tell you, my patience is extremely tested in this area with the amount of traffic that is in the congestion that is down here. So anything that we can do to help statewide, I think we should, and I think this is a wonderful bill. So thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you. And since we started talking about that, and maybe you have this information, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last I saw, it was a couple years ago, the department put out a list of the return on tax dollars in various parts of the state. It was by both metropolitan 7-county area as well as Greater Minnesota. And the last one that I saw showed that for the 7-county metro area, for every dollar spent in taxes for transportation, they received $1.01 worth of return. In Greater Minnesota, in some of the districts, they actually received less than the dollar for every tax dollar that they put in. So we could talk about percentages that go out there, but those that are collected out there as well, in some cases, are greater than the dollars returned back to that district. Do you have the updated version of that? Because maybe that's changed over the last couple of years, but the last one that I saw, it didn't indicate that greater majority.
Representative Petersburg, are you referring to all spending or just the gas tax revenues?
I believed it was all transportation.
Oh, okay, because I know the gas tax revenues, and this is off the House Research Short Subjects on Major Tax Aids and so forth. It says that rural Minnesota pays about 53%. You said 52% of the tax, but it says here, highway aid, they get back 67.3% on the gas tax. So it's one of those few things where rural Minnesota actually gets a pretty good, back for the dollar. But now I'm not speaking for overall, but on the
Right.
gas tax portion. And I remember also from Representative Leader used to talk about the formula, because as a first termer, I wanted to come in and change the formula some to get those under 5,000. And he would caution me that right now, the way the formula works, it really benefits rural Minnesota. And when you start opening that up, then you create some problems. And so I took that wise wisdom and pulled that bill back that I had at the time. But So I mean, that's the gas tax portion of it, and Representative Petersburg, I don't know the numbers on overall, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, because, I mean, there are sales tax for vehicles and other things that go in tab fees and et cetera. So I just wanted to know if that study is still available. So maybe we can see that a little bit later. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Loeffler.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I know it's really difficult to balance things straight right, and we all have different needs and different priorities and different abilities to fund things. And I have never raised issues about the Metro, contributing more than in the gas tax than it gets back. But I have to say, I think we need to, as we're going forward, think hard about increasing how much we should increase the cost of living in the metro area. This doubles our local option sales tax to a full 1% for transit. And transit is so important. It's not a choice. In my area, I have some neighborhoods where 20 to 25% of the residents do not own one car in the household. District-wide, across my district, it's more than 1 in 10. And those people have no other option other than to bike if they're physically able or walk. Today would not be a good day to be walking. They spend $80 to $100 a month just for bus fare, unless they happen to work for a large employer that helps subsidize part of that. And so we're asking the most expensive part of the state to increase its cost of living, to provide the basics for people who need to get to work, who need to get to school, that need to take the bus to get their kid to daycare, and then take the bus from there to get to work. And it's a big price, not just in dollars, but in time. And in Health and Human Services, the bill that we heard earlier, we talked about network adequacy, and there's a requirement that you be able to get to a doctor within 30 minutes. And I said, how do you measure that? Oh, it's a mile a minute. I said, there's no time in my life I think I could go a mile a minute in the metro. But I looked, and to get to a doctor's appointment in downtown Minneapolis with the absolute best bus service from my area would take an hour and a transfer to go to the largest outpatient clinic in downtown Minneapolis, and an hour back. So that's 2 hours to go less than 10 miles. And so you can see why transit is so important to those of us from the metro area. And transit-dependent people are in every single part of this state, and I'm so glad, Chair Hornstein, that you have stepped up to investments in greater Minnesota, because we all have people who, because of either age or a disability or a diagnosis like epilepsy, will not be able to drive, whether they could afford a vehicle or not. And we need to make sure everyone can get to work, to school, to the doctor. And so I appreciate that you've addressed both. I just have some concerns about the level of increase in the metro area and whether or not it will show up for that basic bus rider who's sitting outside today, not in a bus shelter, because most of our stops don't have those, but waiting to go. And I know Chair Hornstein knows that because he takes transit every single day.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know where we're going to go with the conversation with regards to this bill in the committee. I know we want to stick to the tax portion of it. But some of the things that have been mentioned, I'm curious to know, and I have a lot of cities under 5,000, what's the average payment per year to a city under 5,000?
Representative Hornstein, would you know what that would equate to right now?
Mr. Chair, I'll defer to Mr. Lee. I don't know if he's available.
Good.
Good
Welcome,
question.
Mr. Lee.
It was a good question to contemplate.
Please
Mr.
proceed.
Chairman, Representative Fabian, Andrew Lee from House Fiscal Staff. I do not have the runs on me, but I believe the average payment depends on how much the total program is funded. In the current biennium, the program is funded at $8 million a year. The proposed bill would fund it at about $10 million, so it would be an increase from the previous level funding. But in terms of the average per city, that's something that I'll have to get back to the committee if that's all right.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I look forward to that. When you talked about your experience with former member Leader and him cautioning you on the CASA formula and the impact on rural Minnesota, I don't know if Representative Hornstein remembers or not, but about 5 years ago, we had a meeting up in one of the rooms above us with 5 county engineers And in 2008, if I remember correctly, the CASA formula was changed. And according to the county engineers that we met with that day, they said that when that change was made, it became less favorable for rural counties. And what they came in asking for that day, when you were the chair in the 13-14 biennium, they laid out a case about changing the funding formula to make it, again, more favorable or maybe splitting the difference or something. And that at that time wasn't something that you were willing to do. And I'm curious to know if there's any changes proposed in the CASA formula.
Chair Hornstein.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Representative Fabian. It's a good question, and you know it's interesting. I've had members on both sides of the aisle, new members, come up to me, and when they've figured out the Metro members, and when they've kind of figured out what was said on the record here earlier today, that the CASA formula does give Greater Minnesota an advantage, they get upset. And they say, are you going to change the formula? Just similar have you asked. And I said, well, once we start opening that up again, as Representative Leader said, it causes World War III in a sense. And I think overall, at least in the transportation arena in Minnesota legislature, I think overall there is equity and there's balance in this bill. I believe all corners of the state needs are addressed. And if you look at the CASA formula, again, as an overall package, we've seen that there's advantages to Greater Minnesota, particularly when we look at the revenue from the motor fuels tax portion of it. But I think overall, there is a slight advantage, and I don't see a need to tinker with the formula, but I do see a need to add revenue to that existing formula, and that's what we're doing in this bill.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So from my constituents' point of view, that's been expressed to me pretty loud and clear, the gas tax increases is something that they're not the least bit interested in. But under your proposal, raising it 5 cents per year over the next 4 years, Mr. Chair, is that correct?
Correct,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
So, thank you, Mr.
Yep.
Chair, if I could continue.
You bet.
Representative Hornstein, if you increase the gas tax by 5 cents per year, and I'm looking at spreadsheets, and again, I'm not very good at some of these things, but it appears to me that we're actually going to go backwards. If we undedicate the motor vehicle sales tax that's dedicated to the general fund, and what was the other one? The rental vehicles, so forth. I mean, the total number of dollars that are being undedicated to transportation, and then now putting in the new revenue from the gas tax is actually going backwards in terms of funding in there. Am I missing something?
Representative Hornstein.
Mr. Chair, Representative Fabian, no, we are adding revenue even if you make the calculations that you're making, which are important because, yes, there is revenue being taken from the statutory dedication of the auto parts sales tax, going back to the general fund. You're correct in that. But that is not only replaced, that is added. We have significant additions, and that is via a portion of the gas tax. It's via the registration fees, primarily on the roadside. We also, through the MVEST increase from 6.5 to 6.875, that is another revenue stream where we will see an increase that would benefit those northern counties that you represent.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But that's in the second year, I think. In the first year where it's just 5 cents, I feel like we're going backwards, but that's a conversation we can have at another time. But I am curious, and maybe staff can help out. I'm just trying to create a hypothetical with the purchase of a different vehicle. hypothetically, if we take what you're proposing and someone goes out and purchases a different vehicle and they spend $20,000, when we add the increase in tab fees, and let's just say they're buying a used vehicle that's 3 years old and you can still spend $20,000 pretty easily on that. How much is it going to cost additionally to purchase that vehicle with the tab fees, registration, sales tax, and then if you calculate some sort of an average number of miles driven in, I'll say, rural Minnesota, how much more is it going to cost to operate and own that vehicle per year?
Representative Hornstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question, Representative Fabian, and it's a good one. I'll have Mr. Lee, I think, has some of that information compiled already, so
Great.
he can answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If Mr. Lee could enlighten us on some.
You bet, Mr. Lee.
Some of those, I'll say hypotheticals, but they're really not hypotheticals when you actually go out and make that purchase.
Mr. Lee.
Mr. Chair and Representative Fabian, in the bill on page 26 and 27, you'll see the change in the registration tax. There's a few interactions that happen specific to the registration tax. The first is the rate of the tax increases from 1.25% to 1.5%, and then the depreciation window of the registration tax, which is currently 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, and so on, skews slightly higher in the current years, and then is decreased in the 11th year and on. Now, the change would happen if you were to buy a new vehicle, excluding your current vehicle. So there's a provision that you can see that's in current law that is retained in the bill on 27.21 that says that any vehicle previously registered in Minnesota, regardless of prior ownership, the total amount due under the subdivision, subdivision 1M, must not exceed the smallest total amount previously paid or due on the vehicle. So the registration tax increase would not apply to vehicles that someone currently owns, but going forward, if you were to buy a new vehicle, that's when that increase would happen. I can get the committee a run of what various cost points would be. You mentioned 50, 20, 30, things like that, over the lifespan of the registration tax. As regards to the sales tax, that increase would, again, depend on the price at the point of sale. And that would be an increase of 3.75% for the sales tax. And then for the gas tax, the Department of Transportation did an estimate of assuming a 20 mile per gallon fuel efficiency at 15,000 miles traveled in 1 year, consuming 750 gallons. The current tax, a driver would pay $214 per year, and the increase would be $150 per year for the fuel tax.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's nice to see that my 2008 vehicle is now going to be 11 years old, and I'll probably actually see a decrease. So, no, I'm kidding. The two vehicles that I drive, Mr. Chair, are pretty safe. If I could just convince my wife to do something different.
Mr. Chair, it's very strategic, Mr. Chair, in getting Representative Fabian's support.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to continue on with the testifier. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
And so next is Gary Werdish, and then Amber Backhus. Welcome again.
Yeah, good to be here again. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members for being here. You know, Gary Werdish, again, Farmers Union, or Farmers State President of Minnesota Farmers Union. You know, in our policy that's set by our membership, it's very clear in there, our members support a strong increase in dedicated funding for roads and bridges, which is what the gas tax does. We held a meeting, one of our Rural Voices discussions earlier this this week, and there was a number of people there, and we heard loud and clear at that meeting, we want our roads and bridges, they're specifically saying roads fixed. And one of the members actually said a little more colorful language on that, but I won't say that here. But, there's, the one thing we don't talk about a lot is since the gas tax was originally put in, the cost of building and maintaining roads. We're really funding our whole structure with an outdated model, and that's a lot of our problem. None of the funds going into it aren't enough to keep up. I heard Commissioner Gallagher say the other day that on the MnDOT's new projects, it was 20 years. Some of them are on the boards for 20 years. I do remember, I'm also a county or a township supervisor in my county, Renville County. And I remember when in 2008, after the last gas tax increase that we did pass in the state, with our local county township officers and the county commissioners meeting, the county engineer got up in front of everybody and put up on the board, he had five projects that gas tax allowed him to fund that year, 5 projects within that county. And that's the thing we're missing here. We need to, it's a long road. I talked to a county commissioner at that same meeting in the local county, and he said the cost of the county out in where I'm from in that Renville County area, it was $1.5 million to rebuild a county road. That's the problem. We just don't have enough funding. The price of gas went up in the last month about 40 cents a gallon. Did people complain about that? Not one penny of that went to roads and bridges, not a penny. And the vast majority of that money went out of state. That's the problem. Raising the gas tax is a dedicated fund. Raising the gas tax or dedicated funding to roads and bridges, it's not going to cause the wheels of the cars to fall or trucks to fall off. But if we don't do anything, we're going to have, farmers, we depend on a good road system to get our products to market. You got rural manufacturing companies, rural small businesses that need a good transportation system if they're going to make a go of it, if they're going to compete in a global economy. So without not increasing some dedicated funding to the roads will cause the wheels to fall off in a lot of ways. I've stated it earlier, we've kicked this can down the road so many times that can has fallen in the pothole and we can't even find it anymore. Well, it's just frustrating. It's not on the farm, homeowners, Metro, you can relate that to too. Your roof starts, Paul's cutting me off again. Sorry about that. Your roof starts leaking on your house. You can patch it. But at some point, you got to fix it. We're spending a lot of money putting asphalt in patches. We all drive by, the county people or state people were putting, with shovels, putting asphalt in potholes. A couple weeks later, they're doing it again. So my time is off. So thank you, Paul. And we support an increase in funding for the roads and bridges. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Swazinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is just a question in general. There's been some talk around the Capitol at times. As most people know, farmers, we don't pay gas tax on fuel that we use in the field. Yeah. And where would the Farmers Union be on that if that would potentially move forward, where agriculture and tractor use for fuel that we use to work out in the field be adapted to use the gas tax? Would there be much support for that?
Well, no, we wouldn't support.
Mr. Word.
No, sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Swazinski, no, we would not support putting a road and fuel tax on fuel that's used in the fields, and that's exempt now. And I'm not aware of any movement to do that. And if there was, we definitely would oppose that.
Representative Hornstein, just to make this clear, is there any movement to place tax on
There is
farm?
not, and the chair would also oppose that.
Very good. I'll make that clear. Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have Amber Backhouse, and then Todd Hill is on deck.
Amber's home taking care of her kids.
Very, very good. So we have
Excellent.
Todd Hill and then Melissa Heising.
Mr. Chair, for the record, my name is Todd Hill with Hill Capital Strategies, and I'm here on behalf of my client, the Minnesota Service Station and Convenience Store Association. The MSSA represents nearly 400 first, second, and third generation auto care, towing, and convenience store owners and operators all across the state of Minnesota. And I'm here to testify on their behalf in opposition to 2 provisions in this bill, and those would be the increase in the gas tax and the increase in the Metro sales tax. Nearly 95% of all fuel purchases at our members' locations are made by credit cards. And when the $600 million gas tax increase is fully implemented, this will mean an additional $12 to $17 million in credit card fees for Minnesota retailers. So we're going to be taking $12 to $15 million out of the pockets of retailers and sending that money to big banks and credit card companies. The expansion of the Metro sales tax will have a similar impact on our members. Credit card costs are typically the second highest expense in a convenience store or repair facility, only typically exceeded by our rents or our mortgages. This change is beyond the millions of dollars in fees that we are currently sending to banks and credit card companies to process transactions and to collect the sales tax. We feel it's also important for you to look at the impact of this legislation along with other proposals that you've considered this week, be it the removal or the replacement of the escalator on tobacco taxes, which, contrary to popular belief, was not an effort by the big tobacco companies, but actually by retailers to try to make themselves competitive. And then the 0.6% payroll tax, which was also passed this week for the paid family medical leave proposal. We hope you understand that when you raise a sales tax, an excise tax, or mandate a fee on retailers, you are taking money out of the pockets of those businesses and transferring it to banks and credit card companies. And we hope as you increase the cost of businesses to operate in the state of Minnesota, you also look at ways to minimize the impacts on the collections of these taxes, be it through prohibiting credit card companies from applying excise fees to those taxes, or from things like the vendor's allowance, which we've been pursuing for a number of years. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Melissa Heising and Jessica Lake is on deck.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Melissa Heising, Minnesota AFL-CIO. We support comprehensive transportation funding and new revenue as provided for in House File 1555, particularly the gas tax increase indexed to inflation and the local option sales tax funding for transit. The time is now to invest in Minnesota's transportation system. Our quality of life and Minnesota's economic vitality depends on having safe roads and bridges, easy access to public transit, and safe bike and pedestrian paths. Nearly half of Minnesota's roads and bridges are more than 50 years old and in dangerous condition, making it more difficult to move people and goods and services to their next destination. Only 10% of jobs in the metro area are easy to get to by transit, and bus service is very limited in greater Minnesota. A safe, efficient, stable transportation and transit system is necessary for workers to get to work and children to get to school. New long-term revenue is needed to generate new economic development opportunities throughout the state, help retain and attract a talented workforce, create jobs, and keep Minnesota economically competitive. Please support the comprehensive transportation funding in House File 1555. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Lake and then Bentley Graves on deck.
Good
Welcome.
afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Jessica Lake. I'm here representing myself as just a transportation user. I've been fortunate enough to have been employed by two big companies that are located in downtown Minneapolis. I spent over 11 years with Target Corporation, and I'm currently employed by Thrivent Financial. Both companies participate in the Metro Pass program. Thrivent, my current employer, subsidizes a part of that Metro Pass, which makes it taking mass transit an easy choice for me when deciding how I will get to and from work. My husband and I moved to Ramsey, Minnesota last summer. When we were looking for homes, it was a top priority for us to find a home that was within 5 to 10 minutes of transit options. We truly lucked out when we found a home that was less than 5 minutes from the Ramsey North Star station. I've always been an avid bus rider my whole career in working in downtown Minneapolis. It's a stress-free way for me to get to and from work. The bus times were frequent and usually had midday options, which made getting home easier if something popped up. I've been taking the North Star train for the past 9 months, and I must admit, I'm an even bigger fan of taking the train. The train is clean, comfortable, and consistently on time. An hour of my day is spent on the train, and most days I actually choose to work. My only feedback is I wish the North Star offered a few midday routes. Public transportation and programs like the Metro Pass make taking mass transit an easy and affordable choice. The stress of a commute of having to endure traffic, construction, and weather is removed. With the hustle and bustle of our busy lives, I truly feel like I'm given the gift of time when choosing to take public transportation. My experience with transit is not unique. Many of my colleagues at work use transit to commute. In addition to being less stressful, it is less expensive than maintaining a car and parking in a ramp downtown. It also takes a lot of drivers off of the highways, which benefits everyone who is trying to get to work. We can see the population growth that is occurring where we live in Ramsey, with the metro area expected to add hundreds of thousands of people over the next 2 decades. The state needs to invest in transit so we can grow and thrive. I support the metro sales tax and other funding proposed in this bill to ensure that we have the transit system that works for everybody in our region. Those dollars will provide a great return on investment for the Twin Cities and our entire state. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you very much. Bentley Graves. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Bentley Graves from the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. The Minnesota Chamber of Commerce supports a safe, reliable, efficient, and multimodal transportation system in Minnesota to ensure businesses are able to get their goods to market and their customers and employees to their door. We agree that additional investment is needed to improve the state's transportation system, and in 2017, we made important progress on this investment, working alongside Governor Dayton, the legislature, and other stakeholders. In the current biennium, funding for transportation has increased at a rate of just over $100 million per year. That's equal to about a 3-cent gas tax increase. Starting on July 1 of this year, when the new biennium begins, that will increase to a rate of more than $200 million per year, equal to about a 6 to 7 cent gas tax increase. These sizable funding increases are already on the books. Increased investment is happening. And while we appreciate the efforts in this bill to bring more resources in the system, we cannot support it. The gas tax is one of the few state-imposed taxes where Minnesota is competitive nationally. This bill would raise it to one of the highest in the nation, joining a list of many other business taxes where we are already a national outlier. And this proposed gas tax increase sits alongside a House tax bill that will push some of these very same taxes higher still. Employers don't have the luxury of looking at these and other proposed tax increases in a vacuum. Before we consider raising a tax like the gas tax, where Minnesota is competitive nationally, we need to make progress in bringing down some of the other business taxes that already put us at the top of national rankings. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify on House File 1555? All right, members. Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do want to just remind people that Amber Backus did leave a note here from the Minnesota Auto Dealers Association voicing her opposition to this bill for the reasons that are listed there. But as I start, I would like to make sure that everybody understands that I don't think anyone around this table would disagree in our need for funding this infrastructure and even the amount of need that is necessary. But I do think that we have real differences in how we go about that, and I think that's worthy for us to debate. And so when we talk about this or that, please understand that we don't disagree with the need for funding those, just in how we do that. And with that, Mr. Chair, and to Chair Hornstein, I do commend you on a really difficult task that was laid in front of you with, first of all, a negative target, and then with the priorities that you prefer to put into the bill. It was a real challenge, and I think you did what you wanted to and what you needed to do with that. But the way I look at this bill, I really think this bill is driving Minnesota in reverse. I think it is going backwards in a lot of things. I think it is touted as being a very progressive transportation bill, but it's on the backs of a very regressive tax structure, which I think is a different direction than what we really want to go. Once we remove the $418 million that the current budget puts in as dedicated transportation funding and removes that, it becomes very difficult for us to maintain moving forward without regressive taxes to fill that. And that's to me a very big challenge. We have $32 million taken directly out of transportation and put in a general fund that most people would thought that was going to transportation, and that has to do with the vehicle lease sales tax. And then when we redistribute those funds from 60% to 40%, which, by the way, the constitutional amendment was worded uniquely, in which it says no less than 40% goes to transit and no more than 60% goes to Highway User Distribution Fund, even increasing that fund, the tax rate to 6.875%. The Highway User Tax Distribution Fund is actually getting about $7 million less than if we had kept under the same proposal. So we're reducing the dollars going into the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund. Now, I know we're compensating for that with this regressive 70% increase in gasoline taxes, but it still is a departure from where we're going. And so I'm very concerned about that. We heard from Mr. Chair Hornstein that he believes the gas tax really needs to go towards road and bridge infrastructure only. That was a comment that he made. And yet in his bill, we have $1 million going out of the HUTD, which is funded by the gas tax, going to a study that is not going towards roads and bridges. It's going for a study on how we fund highway user tax distribution. Now, that's critical because that $1 million is taken off the top before it gets distributed to counties and municipalities and even to our trunk highway bridges. So that is reduced, and so the amount to everybody else will also be reduced. I do have one question for the chair, if possible. Earlier today, we had a discussion about how the other side determined how to define the reinsurance program, in which that particular reinsurance program, according to them, was designed so that everybody gets, everybody who has insurance got a certain portion of that fund to reduce their payroll, or their insurance premium. But the new plan would allow only those at 400% or more getting this reimbursement deduction from theirs, because that was more of a financially responsible and fiduciary responsible area. And so basically, rather than, in their terms, funding the entire industry, they went to individual deductions for those that needed it most. And yet, Mr. Chair, our transit system doesn't use that same model. Instead, we finance through subsidy the entire institution and industry of transit, even though a lot of the high income above that 400% level are going to get the benefit of that reduction. So do you see that as a contradiction, or do you see that there's other benefits as to why we should do it in one area but not in another?
Representative Hornstein.
Mr. Chair, Representative Petersburg, let's keep in mind that the entire transportation system is subsidized in one way or the other. There was an excellent point that Chair Marquardt and others made earlier about the property tax. That's a subsidy. So I think the sense that, well, some portions are subsidized and some aren't, there is subsidy sprinkled throughout this. What we need to address is, what are we getting for that? And what we're getting for that is improvements to a system that is absolutely necessary and vital for our economy, for our prosperity, and our quality of life. And in the transit field in particular, we heard from Ms. Lake from Ramsey, who talked about not only the personal benefits that she and the 40% of the workers in downtown Minneapolis that commute downtown by transit experience in terms of their opportunity costs and convenience. She talked about the opportunity cost and convenience and savings that everybody, road users, drivers, accrue from that, her choice to use transit. So I think it's important to understand that there is subsidization throughout the system, but that we are getting huge returns for the public dollars that we spend. And I thought it was an excellent point as well that was made earlier, concerning the fact that we've had an increase of something like 40 cents in gas prices even over 6 months, and we're not getting any benefit from that. Whereas for this nickel over 4 years, we're getting tremendous benefit.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to Mr. Chair there, and I believe that the health insurance program is getting subsidized all over the place as well. And what you just described is that the subsidy going into transit also benefits those that are above poverty level or 400% above poverty level. And yet, in health insurance premiums, we say, no, we should make a distinction there, that if you're subsidized and you're getting a premium benefit, it's only for those that are under that particular rate. I'm not going to belabor the point. I just wanted to point out the fact that there are some contradictions in how we talk about subsidy and subsidizing, and that we need to at least understand the reasons for them. So my concerns about this bill are many. I think it is, again, as I said before, I think it's driving Minnesota in reverse, because we are now taking dedicated funds that we had set aside for transportation, putting them into general fund, which now allows the general fund to fund things that have some waste and abuse into it. And I think that's the wrong direction for us to go. And so I would really oppose this bill and hope others will too. And so we can get back to actually prioritizing all of our state budget for this very important infrastructure, rather than just saying, hey, you can be on autopilot with whatever dedicated funds you can get. I don't think that's in the best interest for our future, and I think it's going to take us backwards. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So being from Wright County, we are an absolute bedroom community. We have the vast majority or the vast number of people in my district are in the trades. They have their own work vans, and I can go down any of the little towns in my district and, block after block after they get home, I can see their work vans in their driveways. And, for 5 years, I had a company too that was a trades company. So these are folks that are not just driving to and from work. They literally have work in their van and they're driving all over the metro. They are heavy, heavy users of fuels. So I wanted to get on the record. We've talked a lot about the 20-cent gas tax, but we've talked very little about the inflator that comes after the 20 cents. So for my constituents back in Wright County that use gas and other fuels tremendously, I want to talk just a little bit about that, and maybe you could enlighten me and tell me just a little bit about the inflator that kicks in 2030 and about how much more percent that would be as it continues to tick along. If you could talk about that just a little bit, and then I have a couple other comments and questions.
Representative Hornstein.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Representative O'Neill. The gas tax has not kept up with inflation. In fact, it has fallen by not having an index. We have fallen way behind the value that we're getting from the gas tax. So this is simply an effort to keep up with inflation, and we peg it to not to the consumer price index, but to an index that actually reflects the cost of materials. Members, these projects don't go away; they just get more expensive. And I have appreciated over the years, Representative O'Neill, the relationship we have forged together with the I-94 coalition. And I think that's a real good example of why we need to have new revenue in this system. The costs to people along that corridor of waiting in congestion, the amount of gasoline that they're literally wasting just sitting there in traffic, the lack of productivity, the fact that we had a situation not on your part of I-94, but I think closer to the district I represent on I-94. We had 14 cars get flat tires in a matter of minutes because they were running over a pothole. Well, that's hundreds of dollars of expense that those individuals and families could not plan for, but it's coming out of their pocket. And in fact, the Texas Transportation Institute has said, on average, we pay $1,000 per year because of congestion and because of these unexpected expenses, a front-end alignment, because people are literally running over potholes and driving over very damaged roads. So we need this inflator to keep up with the costs of construction, the spiraling costs of construction. These, again, I will say it again because it's very, very important. These projects don't go away. The I-94 project doesn't go away. I've been on this transportation committee since 2003. The needs we have, Representative Brand, on Highway 14, we've made incremental progress, and I'm happy about that. It doesn't go away. It just gets more expensive. And so that, and I think there's another point here in response to your question, Representative O'Neill, that needs to be underlined, especially because I-94 is a corridor of commerce program. Highway 14 has benefited from corridors of commerce. We have $2 billion in this bill for trunk highway bonds. We can't expand that program. We can't fund that program without additional revenue into the system. Imagine it's a credit card that's at its limit. You know, we're not like the federal government. We can't just pass a resolution and raise the debt ceiling. That's irresponsible. That's unconstitutional in the state of Minnesota to budget like that. And I'm glad we don't. But since we don't have that option or shouldn't use that option, let's live within our means. And if we are going to have trunk highway bonding program that's solvent and useful, that can fund these corridors projects, then we need to also have new revenue coming into the system. And so we need to keep up with inflation, Representative O'Neill, and that's why this index is included. Some years it will be applied and some years it won't. It really is pegged to the cost of constructing highways.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I appreciate all that, and yes, we have worked on the corridors of commerce, and 94 got attention where it wasn't even on the 20-year plan. It wasn't looked at all. And I remember as a freshman, you know, it was a long time ago, Representative Hornstein, I brought the I-94 coalition in, and they gave their presentation. I remember so clearly what your words were. I never knew there was a problem on I-94. So we went from it being literally non-existent in the legislature here to actually getting shovels in the ground and that being accomplished. And I do appreciate that. But my question was, which I didn't hear an answer to, what is the inflationary rate and like what does that equate to for cents? Because in my notes here, I see that it does not drop below 45 cents per gallon. And is that accurate? Or, you know, I want to know, I want my constituents to know, not only is this 20 cents a gallon, but where, like how much does it go up, and is it 1 cent, 2 cent, 5 cent, 10 cent beyond that? I don't know per year.
So, Mr. Chair and Representative O'Neill, you know, there's an average. You know, my understanding is that it will be about 1 cent, but I'm going to actually have Mr. Lee answer those questions because he's got the numbers and he's pretty familiar with the this National Highway Index that we peg this inflator to. So I will, if it's okay, Mr. Chair, have Mr. Lee assist me on this one.
Very good. Mr. Lee.
Mr. Chair and Representative O'Neill, unfortunately, I don't have what the highway cost index is in increase in history, but that's something that I can get the committee. I'll just point you to the substantive language in the bill in front of you. It's on page 34, and the National Highway Construction Cost Index is mentioned on line 34.17. It's my understanding that the National Highway Construction Cost Index has grown slightly faster than the normal measure of inflation, which is the Consumer Price Index. So there's a bit of a distinction there, and if I recall correctly, the governor's bill had the Consumer Price Index, and this has the Highway Construction Cost Index. But again, I can get the difference in the history between the two indexes to the committee.
Representative Hornstein.
And thank you. And we, Mr. Chair, we chose this because it accurately reflects the cost of building highways, which is what this goes for. And I believe the latest state to use a gas tax and have an inflator was the state of Alabama, passed through the Republican House, Senate, and signed by the Republican governor. And I believe they use this as well.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I think it's important as we have this conversation here in the tax committee that we know exactly what the tax is going forward, not just 20 cents, but in 2023, it's actually indexed inflation beyond that. So it continues to go up. I think the constituents in my district definitely want to know that. I think what else is incredibly important is when Mr. Graves came from the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, and I have to give him a little bit of a shout out because way back again, when I was a freshman and you were part of this, Representative Hornstein, we worked on efficiency. And I know that at that time, the chamber was looking at MnDOT doing a 15% efficiency, and we were able to get a 5% efficiency on the floor as an amendment, and that has actually netted quite a bit in new construction. So I think that's something that I didn't see in this bill, and maybe you could speak to that. But what I wanted to get to is the fact that Mr. Graves had said that now this is yet another area that Minnesota is not business-friendly and not competitive nationally. And so our ranking would move for the gas tax alone, not considering all the other things that are in this bill, but just the gas tax alone, we would rank now at 28, we'd go to 4th. And this is my first year on the tax committee, and I can't believe how many times I have heard one bill after another saying that Minnesota will now rank first or second highest in the nation in tax. And here's yet another example of us moving from the 28th ranking to the 4th. And so that's concerning to me, particularly when we talk about an inflator at the end of all of that. So it's not just 20 cents, folks, it's 20 cents plus the inflator every year thereafter. But it also, something else that we haven't really talked a whole lot about is not just the gas tax, but all the other fuels that are involved. And so we're talking about E85, which makes sense, but M85, we're talking about liquefied petroleum or propane. We're talking about liquefied natural gas, compressed natural gas, and just some of the, for one example, the liquefied natural gas is going from 15 cents to 27 cents. So all across the board, we're raising tax on not just gasoline, but all of these other fuels in addition to that. And I don't know, maybe the chamber has an idea, what does that do to our ranking? Because he only talked about the gas tax, but these are, every fuel out there. I mean, it's liquefied petroleum, propane, liquefied natural gas, of course, the 85, but they're all going up. They're all going up. So I think that the public needs to be aware of that also. So everything is going up. I had heard one member say, from the moment you buy your vehicle until you retire it, there is an additional cost to having that all the way through until that car goes to the scrapyard. So I think it's important for Minnesota to know that, and particularly Wright County, where I have a very, very high number of commuters, and it's a bedroom community, and also a whole bunch of, union trades guys out there that have their own trucks, and they're going all over the place, and they are using and consuming a lot of fuel. And the other thing I want to say before I let some other members speak is the fact that when we're increasing all of these fuels, we are also, that is a cost to business, and they will pass that cost along. And so that is why this is a really, really, really hard tax to increase for those that are on fixed incomes. And my seniors are not happy. The low income and the seniors are also not happy, and so the cost of bread is going to go up. The cost of bananas are going to go up. Everything is going to go up because how does it get to us? It's on a truck, and it's now that tax is going up for that fuel. So I think Minnesota needs to understand how much this impacts their everyday lives, and everything that they purchase that has been trucked in here will also go up. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Joaquin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just looking up some facts just so I could kind of give a clear picture when we talk about competitiveness. A lot of states are running into what we're running into and making sure that our roads are maintained, because it kind of is a crisis across the state. And since 2013, 31 states have increased their gas tax because they understand it takes money to build things. 22 states have some sort of variable rate, some of which is indexed to inflation that goes up and down with costs. And we talked a little bit, or we heard a little bit today about the investment we made in the last year in our roads, and that investment was a shift. It was a shift out of our general fund, and it was only for a year. That wasn't new money. That was a shift, and that left a hole, along with a lot of other things that we fund, including education and healthcare. So I really do appreciate, especially Mr. Werlich, bringing some practical views here to this conversation, and kind of hearing what my parents taught me, which is we get what we pay for. You know, it's been a bipartisan approach the last few years to realize how much this is going to cost. The cost that we have out there. The cost that we have out there for folks that are breaking axles and and popping their tires. And folks get that. They get sitting in gridlock away from their time at work and from their families. And I know those folks that are heavy users that travel for a living, that affects them too. And I would hazard a guess, broken axles, popped tires, time in traffic and congestion cost them a lot more than this small increase of 5 cents in a year that gas tax is going to cost. Because you know what? From morning until night, you can see the gas tax raise 30 cents. And none of that goes to our roads. So I want to just thank Representative Hornstein for bringing this budget forward, sitting on the Transportation Committee. It's an honest budget, and it's a transparent budget. I think Minnesotans get that, because you know what? I think the most of them know you get what you pay for.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think about this gas tax. I think about what it's going to do for people in Greater Minnesota, especially where I come from. I come from Greater Minnesota as well. Whatever we eat starts out on a field. The first mile of that trip to the market is on a township road. So it's important that this gas tax will increase the amount of township road aid assistance. So Mr. Wordish pointed that out. Highway 14 is important to me and to a lot of people in my district. And the important thing to note is this gas tax will increase the transportation trunk highway bonding, which will allow for that road to be improved at some point. This also produces more county aid for the county, state, county roads that are out there. I've got a county road that's underwater right now, County Road 12, in my district. It's going to take money, and money just doesn't grow on trees. And so we have to find a way in order for that money to be provided for that project to be taken care of, so that we've got people in my district that don't have to go 20 or 30 miles out of their way to get to work, or to go to the grocery store, or to go to the hospital, or anywhere else. And so this is important. This provides $300 million for corridors of commerce, which I think is a good program. A couple of years ago, it was tinkered with, and my predecessor, Clark Johnson, stood up on the House floor and talked about how it was a bad idea to tinker with it. And because it was tinkered with, in the last biennium, there was discussion about the corridors of commerce and what it did, and it didn't fit with what the corridors of commerce is built for. And so I'm hopeful we can have a conversation about corridors of commerce in the future. I think I'm the only one this year that actually brought a bill forward to actually look at fixing corridors of commerce. And so I'm hopeful that we can have a conversation about that. Anybody else that wants to talk to me afterwards, we can have a chat in my office. Minnesota Transportation Alliance sent a letter to all the representatives and senators. If you opened up the letter, it showed that there was over $1 billion worth of requests for transportation this year. All the different bills, like my $85 million for Highway 14, all of them added up is over $1 billion. We're not going to get there if we don't start talking about how we're going to fund those roads and those bridges and those overpasses for those train tracks. If it comes down to schools or roads, I think this is a better approach, because it doesn't take $450 million from schools or healthcare or all of the other things in the budget. So that's another reason I support it. And another thing I keep coming back to, D+. In my district, I'd say Highway 14 is an F. And there are other roads across the state, probably you have them in your district too, that are Fs as well. And so how does that compete on the national scale when we've got D+ or F roads? We talk about, the regressive nature of this bill. We talk about the regressive nature of the gas tax. I just keep coming back to, and I want to thank you, Chair Hornstein, for having a field hearing in Mankato, where we talked to people in my district in particular about the dangers of traveling on Highway 14. We talked to people who survived car crashes. We talked to people who who lost loved ones on Highway 14. And I keep coming back to that conversation in which Iona Reinhardt talked about losing her son, Michael, not more than a year ago this week on Highway 14, because he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think that's regressive anytime we lose a life on a highway. We can actually do something in the legislature. We can actually lead We can actually do something to improve people's livelihoods, to improve people's quality of lives in greater Minnesota. So thank you, and I support this. That's why. Thank you.
Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just, I want to kind of piggyback on what Representative O'Neill was talking about with that potential inflator, and just kind of just so folks can get a better handle on it and what that would potentially mean, I would just ask staff and maybe the commissioner, since you're up there, to just, let's just imagine 5 years ago that inflator went into place, and give us the numbers, what it would be over the last 5 years, so that we can kind of have more of a concrete, if that was in place and we looked at that kind of inflationary index, just so we could kind of get a real look at what that would mean. I'd appreciate that, so.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner.
Thank you. Representative Swedzinski, we've actually done that. And one of the things that was interesting to me that is in 2008 had the original transportation package actually had a CPI inflation index on it. The governor has the CPI inflation index. That's about a penny 0.3 per year or so thereabouts. It could also go down. It also may not go on in a year, depending on what inflation is. I know that Chair Hordenstein has a different calculator in his bill. But what I can tell you is if in 2008 that inflation index was on the gas tax when we raised it 8.5 cents, you wouldn't be sitting here today discussing this bill because it would have gone up about 20 cents. And that would have relieved this legislature from actually having to have this sort of debate. And we would have been able to, although I want to thank Representative Torkelson and Representative Petersburg and all those members who worked hard at getting more funding into transportation in the last few years, because it was the only way you could agree on doing it, which was to take it out of the general fund. Mr. Chair and Representative Swedzinski, this has been the tried and true way to fund transportation in our state over the last at least 5 to 6 decades, and that is dedicated transportation funding, guaranteed by the state constitution. Members, not every penny raised in this country is the same on gas tax, and that's the other point I'd like to make to you. You will hear that Ohio just raised their gas tax 10.5 cents, and they did that bipartisanly. But do you know that in Ohio, that raises 1 penny raises $66 million. In Minnesota, 1 penny will raise $31 million. In Texas, 1 penny will raise $174 million. Yes, I believe that there is a consequence to doing this, but that's why the governor recognized the working family credit as the way to help poorer Minnesotans be able to relieve their burden. Members, I can't speak strongly enough. We have 500 projects that will be funded with this funding over the next 10 years. 500 projects that will not move forward in the same way without new funding. So, Representative Swedzinski, I thank you for the question, Mr. Chair, to be able to answer it, to tell you that in 2008, had we kept and not had to negotiate a final deal that did not include inflation, we would not be having this discussion today because these projects would be funded.
Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just, that's a great point, Madam Commissioner. We're talking about, general fund dollars being stripped out of the bill moving forward. And yet we're using general fund dollars to backfill, because we don't want to use general fund dollars to backfill using the working family credit, the damage it's going to cause onto these families. So while we're saying we don't want general fund dollars because of this tax, it's essentially what we're doing. We're just taking general fund dollars that we're going to transportation and saying we're going to put a sales tax increase on it. And then we're taking general fund dollars and putting them in a different part of the budget to make up for it. So, I think from a funding mechanism standpoint, I'm glad the governor does realize and recognize that it is going to hurt families of low income in rural Minnesota and all over the state. But in reality, we're simply taking general fund dollars out of transportation and put them into other parts of the budget to make up for a tax increase. And You know, I personally believe, you know, I think we also pay, local units of government also pay sales tax a lot. I think up to the tune of $50 to $60 million a year on road projects. So we're taking dedicated funding, and then those units of government, when they are given state dollars, and then you turn around and use a lump sum contract and buy those materials, are paying sales tax, and that's going back into the general fund. So there is a lot of work that we can do. I appreciate the work that we did in the last budget to do specific projects across the state using general fund dollars. And, you know, there's a lot of other things in this bill that are very troublesome. I mean, I just look at House File 1146, Representative Dean's bill, looking at the per mile driving pilot project. You know, those are different ways to say, well, is folks going to come back and say, well, this still isn't enough? Well, I think we see, you know, as we look at the map of what is going to happen when the day comes and say, well, this isn't going to be enough. We passed this in 2019. I think we see what the roadmap does lay before us is as vehicles get better and better gas mileage and use yes and less gas, which is most studies say that's what will be the direction, that we're going to look at other unique ways to fund transportation. And so folks we say this is going to be all get all, but I think there's going to be more bites out of the apple, and the bite's going to be coming out of local folks' pocketbook. So,
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to comment on a couple more statistical pieces, and I think the commissioner talked about it's absolutely true. Other states raise more dollars per cent of gas tax, but that's immaterial because that's not comparing apples to apples. I mean, the real deal is what is the impact of that cent tax on the average person? And so let's just talk about that 31 million. I think it's actually a little over 31 million, but let's use $31 million per cent of gas tax. And let's assume that we're at $30 million if we take away the amount of impact that gas tax is based upon people driving through the state that aren't residents. 20 cents times $30 million is $600 million per year. How many people do we have in Minnesota? 5.5 million people. That's $109 for every man, woman, and child as a cost for that gas tax increase. 5.5 million people paying $109 per capita per year. Now, you could say, well, some people aren't going to be driving, so they're not going to pay that gas tax. And no, it may not be direct, but it's going to be indirect. Somehow, somewhere, it's going to be passed on to the average individual. And earlier we heard about somebody saying, you know, I talk to people that are paying $100 a month for bus fare, traveling back and forth. And you know what? People down in my area would love their transportation cost to only be $100 a month. We can't even pay the amount of gas that we have put in the car at that price. So I think we have to be real careful about comparing one state to the other. I know that Texas is a whole lot more than 10 times the state population, and yet their gas tax that they are raising is only about 4 or 5 times what we have here in the state. So let's just keep that in mind. But even if we could convince people that we need to raise gas taxes, the complaint that I have down in my area is they don't have trust that it's going to go to roads and bridges. They just don't have that trust. They believe it's going to be siphoned off. It's going to be leaked. And even in the spreadsheet that was handed out today, line 24 has trunk highway operating pressure coming out trunk highways going into aeronautics. We have statewide radio where it says trunk highway pressure coming out trunk highway. That's $446,000. That's $500,000 right there that's coming directly out of trunk highways. We have the $1 million that Representative Straczynski talked about, that study coming directly out of the HUTD, which is prior to it getting distributed to the trunk highway fund. So there are those issues out there, and we need to clean those up as well. And we'll find that we have quite a lot more dollars. So there are a lot of concerns with this bill, and I think we need to be helpful to the average public out there and actually understand how much it's costing them for this roads and bridges. It's not just the 20 cents that they see in the gas tax bump, it's the increases that make up the other $80 that they're going to be paying for other costs in regards to transportation and funding. So Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Anderson Kelleher, on that formula, how does that work?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first of all, I just want to say I brought up the value of dollars raised because the argument's being made before you that this is going to affect business competitiveness. I don't know that anyone has actually produced a study that shows us it actually does that, because members, in 2008, I joined with the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce when we raised the gas tax. They were at the table. They shaped the bill. That was never an argument made. So I'm just going to say, show me that study. People, I believe, are living here in Minnesota. They live in Ohio. I do not know of businesses rushing out of Ohio to leave right now because the gas tax is going up by 10.5 cents. But to the issue of this, I'm never going to say the word again in public, this so-called place where money goes that's not to our roads and bridges. There is case law in Minnesota, 1947, 1951, that says anything that goes to the maintenance, to the building, and to the maintaining of our trunk highway system, therefore, can come from the constitutionally dedicated funds of Article 14. And what does that mean? It means that that is why you see state troopers paid for out of the Trunk Highway Fund. Their job is absolutely integral to making sure our roads and bridges are safe. But I would argue on the issue of operating pressure and what we're seeing there, Representative Petersburg and Mr. Chair, is actually has to do with when you go into a Target store sometime in the next month, and you go and you put in your basket some item, there is a lot that has gone on behind the scenes to get you that item. Target has attributed to the cost of those goods all sorts of things that go into buying the goods, whether it's the transport of those goods, the wholesale buying of those goods if they didn't manufacture them themselves. It has to do with the people who are in the aisles in the red shirts helping you. It has to do when you go to the checkout system and the technology that they have had to invest in. And Representative Petersburg, when you drive on a road or bridge in Minnesota delivered by a county or the state, there is a lot that has gone on to make sure that the planning, design, the hiring of the contracting firm is right on so that you can get on that road and know, and your constituents can know they can drive safely. So this is not, the delivery of these projects is wrapped up in us making sure that we can both hire, design, work with the right private contractors to be able to deliver these projects. And that's a lot of what happens when people are talking about this I'm going to call it really what is not true. This is about delivering the system that you all would like to have in those 500 projects.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner, let's just get back to the very first topic that I brought up, trunk highway pressure and aeronautics. Where does that fit in those three categories that you said was constitutionally, according to the Supreme Court, said it appreciates?
Commissioner.
So, Mr. Chair and Representative Petersburg, and our budget analyst is going to come up, our budget director is going to come up for you too. The history of this is that the Department of Transportation actually runs and maintains a full multimodal system in the state of Minnesota. And I believe is a $2 million increase to aeronautics in this budget? Yes.
So if you'd introduce yourself.
Mr. Chair, members, for the record, my name is Josh Knattert-Hubinger. I am the budget director at MnDOT. I will respond directly to the question about operating pressures. That, if you look at the tracking sheet, is sprinkled throughout all the different budget activities. That reflects pressures to compensation costs going up, to commodities in some cases. And so every budget activity that is funded with base budgets in our current budget bill is proposed to get a relatively modest increase. It works out to be about 3% for those different factors. And so the aeronautics portion is specific to, we maintain a fleet of planes at MnDOT that flies MnDOT employees as well as others. The trunk highway portion is to pay for the pilots and trunk highway funded employees to travel around the state.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, if you look at the spreadsheet that I'm sure that you guys put together, right?
Well, I think this spreadsheet would,
I mean,
would this be the
but you've seen
House
it, right?
spreadsheet?
You understand that the rest of the base budget comes out of the aeronautic fund. It doesn't come out of trunk highway funds. But you're taking the pressure for the increases in those funds, not out of those budget areas, but out of trunk highway directly, which is contrary to what you just said. And so I understand that they could be used, but I also know that aeronautic fund gets charged back to the trunk highway fund for the use of those funds as well. So to me, that is that doesn't fit within the maintaining quality, whatever, of all the services directly related to roads and bridges.
So, Mr. Chair,
Commissioner.
maybe I can try one more time. So what it means is that when one of our MnDOT employees needs to fly to northwestern Minnesota, because we have calculated that it's actually cheaper for them to fly than to get in a car or have 3 people get in a car and reimburse or use the vehicle fleet we have. What's happening there is for the portion of their salary that is related to the trunk highway fund, we are then able in MnDOT to put that back into the aeronautics budget. We use a series of chargebacks, like many state agencies do, to each individual fund. That is what's happening there. So it is about the delivery of the trunk highway system. It is about the maintenance of the trunk highway system. It is not about the overall aeronautics division. It's about who is using the aeronautics division and how we're getting those dollars out there. And members, Mr. Chair, one of the other issues for this operating piece is actually, I believe I wasn't here, I wasn't the commissioner when this happened, but apparently there is a decrease that MnDOT would experience in our budget in relation to the operating pressures that are unique to MnDOT, and that is also why you're seeing that.
Representative Petersburg.
I will I'm not going to go into further debate with it, but I think you can understand the public's perception about how this doesn't seem appropriate. And we're dealing with perceptions, and we're dealing with people that are going to have to accept a gas tax increase so that we can pay for some of this leakage that's out there. And so whereas I understand that you can justify it through all sorts of legalities, the reality is that if it doesn't seem right, most people aren't going to think it's right. So I won't debate it any farther. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the weather is not getting any better, and neither are the roads, so I suppose we'll make this brief. What has been said by many of my colleagues. I just want to share a brief comment and then a question for the author as well. The recent poll I saw in Minnesota that most Minnesotans did support, or a good number of them, a 10-cent gas increase if all was dedicated to the roads and bridges. And I think that as this comes to light, then Minnesotans realize that out of the 20-cent gas tax, only 10 will go back to roads and bridges. 3% or 3 cents will go to relieve congestion, which is heavy, especially coming from Wright County. They'll be very disappointed. Fortunately, this is all dead in the Senate. It's going nowhere. Unfortunately, Representative Horenstein, all the good work that you did in the bill with the increases is probably not going to pass, and Minnesotans are going to have more money in their pocket, I think, at the end of the day, unless you can come to an agreement and a compromise to reduce some of the fees. As I said, most Minnesotans do support, and even in Wright County, a 10-cent increase if it's dedicated to roads and bridges. But there's so many increases in fees and to your bill, to the billions of dollars that will completely come out of people's pockets and wallets and businesses and families and raise the cost of goods and services that are transported. I think you're making a huge mistake. As far as our trunk highways, there are highways, Highway 14, Highway 12, and others, particularly 12 and 14, they're very dangerous. Commissioner, you know that. We've dealt with some issues with that. And I would like to see a good portion of the money at least dedicated to making highway traffic safety. And your bill does some of that, but it doesn't go far enough to even save lives. You're spending millions of dollars on a climate and environment report annually. It was $75,000 each year for a climate and environment report. I don't think that's going to go towards highways at all and for the safety or to relieve congestion or to fill potholes. So I'm disappointed to see that. I hope that can come out in the Senate. $1 million from the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund to create a pilot project to test a mild charging system for drivers. I presume for an electric car, where nowhere in your bill does the electric drivers pay anything for our roads and bridges. There's no increase to their fee for gas taxes, except when they purchase the vehicle. Then you have another $122,000 from the general fund for the active transportation program to encourage and fund bike pedestrian infrastructure. So I won't go on and on with the different fees and structures that'll go in here that are not going to go to relieve congestion. They're not going to go to improve our trunk highway fees. They're not going to go towards improving the safety of our roads. They'll just go towards taking more money out of the families and businesses in Minnesota and not get to really where we need to do and relieve congestion, fix our highway system. And very disappointed in that. As you said, it's user fees, Commissioner and Representative Hornstein. Yet on your on the bill on 27.9 down to 27.20 for the appreciation of a vehicle, by the 11th year of a vehicle, those users pay their users pay a reduction. So you're not utilizing most of the cars in Minnesota that are 11 years or older. Their fee will be reduced, therefore not a user fee. Why is that?
Commissioner.
So, Mr. Chair, Representative McDonald, the 20 cents raised by this bill, a nickel every year for 4 years in Representative Hornstein's proposal, will go 100% by Constitution to roads and bridges. I think that members sometimes are confusing the return to the general fund of general fund statutorily dedicated dollars. Every single penny of that gas tax, or we will be sued, will go to roads and bridges. And Mr. Chair and Representative McDonald, I can't tell you. At MnDOT, the employees and folks at MnDOT, from top to bottom, we have a safety culture. Our number one job is to work to get you from where you want to go to where you want to be safely. And so to say that the 500 projects that will be funded with this funding will not improve the safety of Minnesotans is almost unspeakable. It absolutely will improve the safety of our roads and bridges. That is our ethic. That is our mission. We will assure you of that. That is what we do.
Representative McDonald.
Commissioner, I know that is the number one priority of MnDOT. And I did not say that it wouldn't be their number one priority, continue to be. I stated 3 items, particularly in the bill, that are going towards items that will not improve the safety of the road. So I brought that out as the attention to illustrate to you that not every fee, not every increase, not every gas tax increase will be going towards the safety and improvement of our highway system. In those 3 items that I chose, the $1 million a year for a project to test a per mile charging system for driving, or $122,000 for an active transportation program to encourage people to bike and pedestrian. Those 2 items particularly, and I could go on for several other, are not going to be helping increase the safety of our highways. Wouldn't you agree?
So, Mr. Chair and Representative McDonald, I would disagree about bike and pedestrian safety. We are in a near epidemic today of pedestrian fatalities in Minnesota, and it goes across the state. So anytime that we can work with local communities and counties to do better design and safety work on a mode of transportation that many Minnesotans must use, which is their feet, the oldest form of transportation that we have, the footpath, or on biking, which is increasing. And across the state, the number of people who want to be biking. I think it's important. But let me get to your vehicle miles traveled issue. This is actually to match a federal grant that we have. And to this point, sometimes you will hear in the debate, and I'm sure you'll hear it on the House floor, that we should not be relying on the fuel tax, gas tax, or any of these other things, because the future is coming and no one will be filling up their car anymore. I disagree. From the information that I have seen, it is the workhorse of our system today, the gas tax. But you do need to know, and I think it's fair to say, that of the 4.9 million vehicles registered in Minnesota today, under 4,000 of them are fully electric today. But we do need to get ready for the future, Representative McDonald. And I think that is exactly what this sort of study helps us do, is to be able to analyze and look at how are we going to fund transportation and how will Minnesotans be traveling and interacting 25 years from now. Not today, but 25 years from now or 30 years from now. And these very small amounts of money, and Representative Hornstein certainly can talk to them, the issues that we hear from Minnesotans about are they are worried not only about their personal safety on our roads and bridges, but they are concerned about the effect that climate has through transportation on their lives, on the lives of their children and grandchildren, and even unimagined great-grandchildren. And so I just urge us to look at the whole here. It is easy to see fault. The fault finder, not you, of course, can always find fault. The perfect is the enemy of the good. This is more than a good bill that Representative Hornstein and his committee have assembled.
Representative McDonald. Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be real quick. I know that people are anxious to get out in the storm. I can tell you that all the members of the Highway 310 Coalition, just real quickly, Representative Hornstein, you mentioned Alabama some time ago, and I just want to give the members a little perspective. Alabama did raise their gas tax, and so now their gas tax is at 31 cents. And the average of their neighboring states, okay, states that immediately touch them, is 28.5 cents. In Minnesota, of course, if we go to 48.5 cents over the next 4 years, the average of our neighboring states, the average of our neighboring states is going to be 28.5 cents, and the average of the Alabama's neighboring states is 31 cents as I look at this. In terms of total tax burden, Minnesota currently is number 5, and Alabama is number 43. So that's just to give a little perspective. The other thing I wanted to do is, Commissioner, you said something about business competitiveness. Yesterday, I received an email, I'm not going to say the person's name, referring to the gas tax. Looks like it's time to move our companies out of Minnesota. Taxes are driving my companies to cross the border and establish in Sioux Falls or Hudson. Nevertheless, enough is enough. This amount of rise, referencing the gas tax, will be the last straw for our 40-plus-year-old Minnesota companies. If this huge tax is implemented, the team will be assembled and a new location will be picked by summer's end, doing whatever we can to get our companies and their jobs out of Minnesota by the end of the year. I'd be happy to share the person with you offline, but members, this is real, and when you live in a border community like I do, kind of, or at least the district that I represent, this is an amazingly regressive tax, and I've talked to several small service station operators in the cities like Carlstead and so forth who are very, very fearful of what impact this is going to have on their business. Thank you.
Very good. Did you want to respond to that?
Well, I can respond quickly, a couple of points. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Fabian. We do have, there is a provision in the existing law related to border communities, and we don't change that because we're sensitive to the question that you brought up. And we're not going to address the small service operations. It sounds like you wanted to respond, so Mr. Chair, Representative Fabian.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Hornstein, I appreciate the border cities legislation that's in place, but all that does is move the border further east. Because at some point, when you move the border further east from the Red River, now the service station operators and the people and so forth who live in Hawley or some other small community, I mean, at some point, it's going to impact people. So I understand the immediacy of East Grand Forks and Moorhead and Breckenridge and the other cities that are in that border cities. But what about the cities that are just outside of that border cities legislation area? That's a reality.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Hornstein.
Just quickly, and I think that Representative Fabian made an important point about small service station operators. And it's an opportunity for me to, reiterate again a point about the fact that we've had a 40, in some cases 60-cent increase in the per gallon cost of gas, just over the last few months. We're not talking about a nickel over 4 years. We're talking about a 22% increase just in a matter of months. And it's important to know where is that money going? 65% of it, goes directly to oil companies and these Wall Street speculators and others that are, involved in, in the oil, the complex speculative oil price economy. 14% goes to refiners. 13% taxes, 8% marketing and distribution. And then a small percentage of that 8% is to the folks that Representative Fabian is talking about. So where's the outrage, members? Where's the outrage at the 65 cents that is going to folks that have already received a $25 billion reward in the federal tax bill, directly to big oil? Where's the outrage about the incredible speculation that is involved in this industry, the different exchanges, the Dubai exchange, the London exchange, the New York mercantile exchange, people buying and selling. This isn't production. This isn't money going to fill potholes in our streets and in our communities, which is really what our 5-cent increase over 4 years goes to. And look, that's a reality. We may not have a lot of control over that in the Minnesota House of Representatives, but I want to know where's the outrage about that. That's where most of this money is going. So let's get some perspective here. And let's understand that this nickel over 4 years is going directly to our communities. We will have for you, and I think many of you have seen this already, the illustrative maps of everybody's district about what you are going to get in your community as a result of the passage of this bill. So I think it's really important. I share your concern, and members, we had more than one person lobby us about getting rid of the minimum markup. Maybe if you get rid of the minimum markup, that'll reduce the cost of gas. Well, the minimum markup was Representative David's effort in 2001 to protect the very people you're talking about. And I said, no, we are not. We have to make sure that the pressures that are put on these small retailers, that we understand those and respect those, and we're not going to mess with the minimum markup. So I just wanted to give people some perspective about where that dollar that you're paying at the gas pump goes, because it's very important. People have to get some perspective on this.
Representative Hornstein, that sounded like a great closing statement. Would you like to add any more? And I think anything further, Representative Hornstein, that sounded like.
Well, I just really appreciate, Mr. Chair, the members' comments on both sides of the aisle. I'll just go back to my opening comment to say that this is a much-needed, urgent bill that will fix our infrastructure, that will make our state competitive and economically prosperous, because we can't have a strong economy and create jobs without a first-rate infrastructure. We can do better than a D+. Please vote yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner. The chair renews his motion to refer House File 1555 to the general register. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Nay. Motion does prevail, and House File 1555 on the general
We used to
register.
vote in